Alright guys, today I wanted to make a video about Premier League managers in specific, and are they put under too much pressure? And also, are we heading down a bad road in football now with the amount of teams that are changing their manager so frequently? Now, obviously, there have been teams for years and years now who like to change managers and just keep it fresh. I think Chelsea are an example of this, certainly under the Roman Abramovich era, when they had loads of managers in what was actually a very successful period for the club. So started off with Ranieri, Mourinho, and then they had a few sort of managers who did, just like a year or so. Then moved on to Carlo Ancelotti, Villas-Boas' short reign. Mourinho returned, obviously. Conte, Sarri. I'm sure I'm missing out people here. Lampard too. So they had lots of different managers. Thomas Tuchel as well. But the difference, I believe, is that with Chelsea, they've got the financial power to consistently bring in world class players, and they'll stay at the top, obviously. But when you see teams lower down in the league changing manager as soon as they get into a bit of trouble or form takes a turn for the worse, like if you look at Crystal Palace right now, Crystal Palace, they're not in the position they want to have been at the start of the season, but it's not like it's been a disastrous season. At the end of the day, they're still 12th in the league. If they'd have finished 12th at the end of the season, they would have gone, okay, it's not really a step forward, but it's not a disaster. This is a very competitive league. Crystal Palace aren't a team who spend masses and masses of money every year. They spent a bit in the summer of 2021, but in the summer just gone, there really wasn't a lot of money spent in the transfer market. So they're one of the lowest spending teams in the Premier League, Crystal Palace. So I think the fact that they've sacked Patrick Vieira is a bit harsh. I know they are only a few points off the relegation zone, but I don't understand not having belief in your manager if you've hired him in the first place. I can't remember the last time I've seen a manager get relegated with a club and managed to stay on and get the chance to bring them back up again. It very rarely happens in football nowadays. To me, it's just wrong, because you get stability from having a manager for a long period of time. He gets to know the players, and that can only be a good thing for the squad, in my opinion. But I just don't understand the constant shopping and changing of managers, particularly I think Watford are a ridiculous example over the past few years. They're currently in the Championship, and it's not a surprise, to be honest, for me, because it can only lead you in one direction eventually when you have 3 managers a season who all have their different ideas. They want different players in the team. It's beyond a joke, I think. And I think the problem we're going to get to is, and I want to use Antonio Conte at Spurs as sort of a case study here, is that managers will sign these big contracts that clubs offer them. So for a certain amount of years, let's say 4 or 5 years, and they'll be on, I don't know, let's say 5 to 10 million a year. I think that's probably the average club in the Premier League, isn't it? What's that, 5 to 10 million a year? That's got to be about 100 to 200 grand a week. I think that's generally the average for a Premier League manager who's hired. Okay, so let's say £5 million a year. So the entirety of their contract is going to be worth 15 to 20 million pound. Now, if a Premier League manager lasts a year, that's £15 million or £20 million instantly just written off by a football club if they know that there's a good chance a manager is going to be sacked. And when it comes to the bigger clubs like Tottenham, with Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho as recent examples, Nuno Espirito Santo as well, managers are going to look to sign for these big clubs as just a payday. They know they don't need to like go above and beyond. As long as they have, you know, a period early on where they do quite well, they don't need to, you know, transform the football club. Like there are still obviously a couple of examples in the Premier League, or a few, like Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Mikel Arteta, where they have managed to do brilliant things for their football club and have been a successful appointment. But with Antonio Conte, has he actually took Tottenham forward as a football club? Well, he got them into the top 4 last season, which was a big plus, did very well, and he definitely had an impact on the team when he came into the club. But this season, it's not really been a step forward, has it? Like they're technically still in the top 4 right now. It's going to be a battle to stay in it, and that they are, you know, probably the favourite, I would say, to get top 4 this season. I mean, below Man United, Man City and Arsenal, obviously. But it's like Conte knows that if he causes a bit of a stir and makes a couple of problems arise about, or like questions the ownership a little bit, he knows that his job's done and he can get a huge payoff, and Tottenham can, you know, end his contract by paying all of it off in one go. So will managers do this more often from now on to, you know, have a bit of financial security and move on to the next job, because they'll have, even with this, you know, all right job that Conte's done at Tottenham, he possibly could have took them a bit further. He still have on his record that he won Serie A with Inter Milan less than 2 years ago, and the job he did at Chelsea as well, managing to take them from 10th in the table to winning the Premier League the following season. So he's still got good things on his record, is the thing. So clubs will ultimately be interested in him, especially the bigger clubs. So yeah, it's really interesting to see where this sort of relationship that clubs have with managers will go in the next few years, because I can't see it being a positive thing that clubs instantly, as soon as things start going wrong, they start to blame the manager. Whereas there are other aspects within the club that can be looked at, like the recruitment. We all know that Man United, for example, the recruitment policy wasn't just the manager's fault for many years. It was people like Ed Woodward. So when a manager, I'm not saying that there are Man United managers who shouldn't have been sacked, but when a manager's not allowed to have full control over who comes into the club as transfers, then is it really his fault if he has to play players who weren't his ideal signing and didn't really fit in with his plans? So sometimes it's just down to the structure of a club, I believe. And I think it can be quite harsh, because as soon as a club starts underperforming, it's instantly the manager's fault. Like, I'm a Liverpool fan, for example, as you can tell by this t-shirt. I love Jurgen Klopp. There's been questions this season, is Jurgen Klopp's time with the club coming to an end? I think we'd be absolutely ludicrous to sack him as it is right now. I think that would be stupid. But there's still questions over it just because the club's underperforming. But the reality is, the reason Liverpool are underperforming is that because the clubs who, over the past 5, 6, 7 years, who were maybe a level below Liverpool in terms of performance levels, let's take Arsenal, for example. Arsenal, top of the league this season, rightly so, because over the past 2 or 3 years, they've been outstanding in terms of how they've recruited players, whether it be players through the academy like Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, or even just like young signings who have potential to go on and do great things for the club. I think of William Saliba, Gabriel Martinelli, or even just, you know, signings who have maybe not instantly, but over a 6-month period have come into the club and transformed the club, like Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Jesus, Alexander Zinchenko. There's obviously lots more examples. But with Liverpool, this hasn't been the case. There hasn't been that same level of recruitment, and that is why Liverpool haven't really managed to take the next step, because things have gone stale and players have gotten older. And, you know, when a player is 26, 27, 28 years old, nowadays, with the amount of athleticism and physicality that is required to play at the top level in the Premier League, you are going to be a better player, or you're more likely to peak at a younger age, like in that 25 to 29 years old age group, rather than once you turn 30. I don't want to sound like one of these idiots that thinks as soon as a player turns 30 that his career is instantly, oh, he's in the twilight of his career, don't sign him. That's not the case. Look at Luka Modric. He's 38 this year, I believe. Still an outstanding player. Obviously, he's not the future, but he's still capable of playing at the top level for Real Madrid, as he's shown time and time again. But players peak at different ages, and I don't think Liverpool have been able to judge who should be moved on from the club and who should stay a bit longer. I don't think Liverpool have judged that very well, to be honest. So yeah, I don't think that's completely the manager's fault, because the manager has had to keep some of them because he hasn't had the incoming players to replace them. That's my honest belief in why Jurgen Klopp should not be blamed fully anyway for Liverpool's decline this season. So that's another example of managers being put under. Although, to be fair, that could all just be paper talk, that Jurgen Klopp, there could be absolutely no substance to it whatsoever. So yeah, I just believe it is wrong that managers instantly get the blame or instantly get put under pressure as soon as a club starts underperforming, because it can be down to anyone at the club, players, coaching staff, besides the manager, even like things as trivial as like physiotherapists, like in the medical team, all the way to people who are higher up at board levels. So it's wrong that managers should be instantly blamed, in my opinion.